All right, well, it's wonderful to have you back. I'm Niall Walker. I'm an agent in Washington State. Today we're talking about Medicare, and I have a YouTube video that I already created. Hopefully you've had the opportunity to see, and it's called Medicare Part A and Part B Original. If you haven't seen it, may I encourage you to see that first before you go through this video, because this video is going to be defining why you need a Medicare supplement plan or Medicare Medigap plan, and then exactly what that plan actually does and what options there are there. And we're also going to be talking about Medicare Part D, which is the prescription portion of Medicare. First one we're going to do is talk about Medicare supplements or Medigap plans. Again, those Medicare plans are additions to original Medicare Part A and Part B. Medicare supplement or Medigap plans are designed to pay the portions of Medicare Part A and B that you would normally pay. So, just a quick refresher: Medicare Part A, which is hospitalization, has a admittance deductible of about $1,400. It also has co-pays once you've been hospitalized for either 60 days, which is about $350 a day, and it goes up to $700 a day approximately once you've hit 90 days. So, and it does not provide coverage throughout the world. So a Medicare supplement or Medicare Medigap plans are available through insurance companies to pay for the portions of the Medicare Part A and Part B that you would normally have to pay. These plans are available through life insurance companies and health insurance companies. There's many of them that are available. However, they do use a generic description of the plans, and that's something the Medicare requires of them. And their plans A through F, this last year they also introduced a Plan G. Now, there is a table that you'll see here in a second, and the table kind of shows you what parts of Medicare A and B each of these plans cover. So some of them will pay for maybe the hospital deductible. Others may to pay for the doctor's hospital co-pays after the 60 and 90 days. Other plans may cover the 20% on Part B that you have to pay and provide worldwide coverage, and others may pay a combination of those. So Medicare requires all these plans to indicate which plan they are, so when you look at them, you can compare them easily. The one plan that's the most common is Plan F, and the reason Plan F is so common is because it is the plan that pays every expense or a portion of expenses that you're supposed to pay that Medicare doesn't pay for each of those things. So it pays the hospital, the doctors, pays deductibles and all that, including the worldwide coverage. Obviously the premium is going to be different depending upon how much of the Medicare is being supplemented by the plan you choose. Just for your common knowledge, again, Plan F, which is the most popular, that plan typically runs about $220 a month as an additional premium to you, and you would be paying that in addition to the Part B premium you're paying to Medicare for the doctor's coverage, which was at $135 a month. So between those two, you're going to be paying close to $380 a month for the supplement for the Plan F and your original Medicare Part B premium that you're paying to the government. And you still need to add a prescription drug coverage. Medicare supplements, because they're paying what Medicare doesn't pay, they do not have any doctor directories. You don't have to go to certain doctors because Medicare doesn't require you to go to any specific doctors. You can go wherever you want to go as long as they'll accept you as a patient and receive the Medicare payment. And so these plans, you go to the doctor, Medicare pays the first 80%, then the plan is going to pay that 20% they did not pay. Some of those plans will also pay that 15% balance billing that the doctors can do. So you'll need to refer again to those plans to make sure that they're covering what you want them to cover and select the proper plan for your need. These plans can be sold by almost anybody. They are considered like a life product, so any insurance agent, any health insurance agent can sell these products, and many of them are sold directly by the companies themselves. And so you can do some research. If you're working with an agent to help you select your plans for your Medicare, he'll have many of these that are available for you to review. And so that is an option. If you're going with original Medicare and a Medicare supplement or Medicare gap, pick up the differences, you still need prescription drug coverage. So I'm going to take just a minute and talk to you about the prescription drug coverage under Medicare. It also is provided through insurance companies. However, Medicare controls it, regulates it, and contracts with these health insurance companies to provide it. So when you look at the design for these Part D plans, you're going to see that there's features on no matter what company you go through that are the same, and it's because that's how Medicare designed it. So let me go through that very briefly. Again, go to Medicare.gov to get some very specific information. So Medicare Part D, the plan does have a design plan that is created and controlled by Medicare. So regardless of what company you go to get the Plan D, prescription drugs, you're going to find some very similar things about all of them. And that's because that's how Medicare designed them. So I'm going to take just a minute and kind of briefly describe how they work. Again, go to Medicare.gov for greater explanation because they'll be exact there, and I'm going to be very general in my description. So first of all, it's important to understand that these plans that are being offered through insurance companies but regulated by Medicare are going to be varied in premium. They do have the ability to use different formularies, which is a schedule of drugs. So one company may use a larger group of drugs as part of their formulary than another one. Medicare does require that all of these plans provide drugs to treat every condition, but there may be, for instance, 2 name brand drugs that are capable to treat the same condition. One plan and insurance company may choose one as part of their formulary. The other one may choose the other one. So it's not uncommon for you when you start looking at your specific drugs to find out that possibly one plan you're looking at, that drug is not part of their formulary, and you look at another company's plan and it is. And so that becomes a little challenging when you're beginning to look at these plans and the prescription drugs you want it to cover. Now, the thing to understand about this plan, the Part D, is Medicare wants you to be treated, but they want to do it as cheaply as possible. So they do what's called step therapy. They require that the doctors prescribe to you the cheapest drug available to treat the condition, which is usually going to be a generic brand drug. If that drug doesn't work, then you go back to the doctor. He can prescribe to you a little more expensive drug. Again, you take that home, you try it. If it doesn't work, you come back to the doctor, and he steps you up to the next more, and so on and so forth, until whatever you end up with was actually taking care of what you're trying to be treated for. That's called step therapy. So when you look at all these drug plans, you're going to find that most of them are using what's called tiers. They'll have a tier 1, 2, 3, 4, and many of them now have a tier 5. Tiers 1 and 2 are going to be generic drugs, a preferred generic and a non-preferred generic. Each drug may treat the same condition, but just a little different formularies and formulas and a little different costs. And then the next 2 tiers, tiers 3 and 4, are going to be usually name brand drugs. Tier 5 is usually for specialty drugs. These are going to be the kind of drugs that you use when you have a transplant, and they're drugs to keep you from your body from rejecting the transplant, or it could be something in conjunction with treatment of cancer, and these drugs may be $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a month costs. And so that's usually the tier 5 of those kind of drugs. Again, when you see your doctor, he's going to prescribe generic drugs to you. You're going to have to go through that whole process before you get into main name brand drugs as you work through those tiers. The Part D prescription drug plan is designed so that the first approximately $3,000 worth of drugs are covered by the plan under those co-pays for your tiers, for your step therapy. So if you're going buying drugs and you're spending money on them throughout the course of the year, approximately the first $3,000 worth of those drugs, you're going to pay about 25% of the cost of drugs, and Medicare wants the plans to pay about 75% of the cost of those drugs, which is going to be done by the co-pays that you pay under that tier 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Typically, the tier 1 drugs are going to be very low copay, a $3 or $5 copay. Tier 2 is going to be like a $8 or $10 copay. Tier 3, the name brand drugs would be like a $40 copay, and a Tier 4 name brand drugs would be closer to a $80 copay or more. And then the specialty drugs are usually a percentage, so usually you end up paying like 80 or 20% of the cost of drugs, or 30% of the cost of drugs, and then they pay the balance. But again, remember, that's only on the first $3,000 worth of drugs that you use in the course of the year. So you just pay those co-pays. As long as you're buying less than $3,000 worth of drugs a year, all you're going to pay is those co-pays. The plans are also allowed to have an annual deductible for the drug portion, but those deductibles cannot be any higher than $400 a calendar year. Now, once you go through that first stage of coverage, that first $3,000 worth of retail cost of your drugs, you go into what they call the coverage gap. The people that have been on Medicare for a long time call it the donut hole. It used to be while you're in, once you spend the $3,000 in purchasing drugs, you had no coverage at all. But Medicare has been reducing that the last 5 or 6 years, and now while you are in that coverage gap, your co-payments are going to be about 35% of the cost of the drug, and the plan will pay about 65% of the cost of drugs. They will continue to lower that, so your cost out of your pocket will be less and less. And year 2022, I think they're supposed to get it to where it's in the same as the first $3,000 worth of coverage. Now, the last part of the drug coverage is what they call the catastrophe portion. This is kind of why they call it a donut hole. You had coverage at the beginning, no coverage in the middle, and then you had coverage at the end. The catastrophe portion pays almost 97.5% of the cost of your drugs. So if you're somebody that's on one of those very expensive drugs that you're spending $4,000 a month on, you're going to find the first month's going to pay the majority of it, or about 75% of it, which will spend the $3,000 you've got. Then you're going to be paying 65% of the next several months until you spend $5,000 out of your own pocket on drugs. Now, once you spend $5,000 out of your own pocket during that coverage gap or the donut hole, then you'll come out of that into the catastrophe phase, where they're paying 97.5% of the cost of your drugs. So for those with severe health issues and a lot of drug costs, you will have to deal with that coverage gap or donut hole, and that is a calendar year thing, so you can end up having to deal with it the latter part of the year. In 1 year, beginning of the next year, you may not have to deal with it for a while, but if you continue to spend large amounts of money on drugs, then that sometime during that year you'll fall into that same thing over again. And because it changes so little from year to year, you're typically going to have the experience of that change happening about the same time each year. If your drugs become more expensive, some conditions occur where you're having to buy more expensive drugs, you may hit that earlier in the year. And it's just something that you have no other choice, and there's no way to supplement it. There's no way to do anything there's no other plans out there allowed to pick up the part that Medicare Part D or prescription drug doesn't cover. You just have to save and make sure it's part of your budgeting. There is special help. Medicare does offer for low-income people some help in either the premiums or also in some of these co-pays or costs of the drugs. There's also help from Medicaid, which is state assistance to low-income people, and again, that can also supplement those co-payments or deductibles or other parts of your drug coverage. So I would definitely check with Medicaid with your state if you're low income, because that might also help with some of these costs. Now, these standalone drug plans typically run somewhere between $20 and $80 a month, depending upon the formularies that they use and the size of their calendar deductibles and then some other features they may have. So you'll need to look and be able to take a look at which ones are going to fit best for you. They also have the ability to contract with specific drug stores or drug companies, and so there will be some that may have contracts with certain drug stores with the lower co-pays. There may be other drug stores that they won't even compensate you for. So be careful when you're selecting the drug portion, the Part D, that you're looking at that as well when you're making your decisions as to what you're going to do with your original Medicare or your original Medicare with the Medicare a gap or Medicare supplement, and then your drug coverage. So it's a little complicated. If somebody that's keeping the original Medicare, they're going to have a card for original Medicare, they're going to have a card for Medicare supplement if they're adding a supplement, and they're going to have a third card for their prescription drug card. So every time you go in somewhere, if you go to the hospital, you hand them both your supplement and your Medicare original card. If you go to the drugstore, you'd be handing them the drugstore card. Because you literally are covered by 3 different plans. I hope that was helpful. May I also suggest, because Medicare is so complicated, this is why in my agency, I decided to offer services for these plans. It's because often it's so complicated that you will probably need some consultation. And there's agents that are contracted with these insurance companies and have gone through the training with Medicare, CMS, and they're able to offer these products. And they may be very, very helpful for you to work with some of those as you're trying to work through this choosing the right plan for you. The interesting thing is, depending upon your health, the best plan for you may not be the best plan for the person that walks into our office right after you come in, because your health is different, the drugs that you're taking are different, the doctors you want to go see are different, and so it can be very, very complicated. And it may be very helpful for you to work with somebody local that is contracted with these companies and insurance and understand Medicare, so they can really help you out. Now, when they do help you out, they are being compensated through a commission paid by the carrier that's designed these plans. There's no additional cost to you. So don't ever feel like you can't talk to somebody that's an independent agent and available to work with Medicare, that you're paying more than you should be because you have to pay them in some fee. Whether you go directly to the company online or whether you work through one of these agents, your cost is going to be exactly the same. The other advantage through working through an agent is that if you call the insurance company that offers the plan, you're only going to be presented that one plan that they're offering. Well, at least their plans that they're offering. Some companies may have multiple plans, but anyway, if you're working through an independent agency, he may have the ability to show you many different insurance companies' options so that you have the opportunity to pick what's best. So again, may I encourage you to talk to somebody that is licensed, and I think you'll find that their expertise and their assistance will be well worth your time. If you want information about Medicare Advantage plans, I would suggest that you watch the video that I'll be have produced for what is Medicare Part C or Medicare Advantage, and that video will be available also on my YouTube video, and that will also answer your questions. My opinion is, if you have lots of health issues and your health is deteriorating, that probably your best option is original Medicare with a Medicare supplement or Medigap plan and your prescription drug plan. However, if you're younger or you are healthy, then I really believe that the Medicare Advantage plans, Medicare Part C, where everything is included together, is the best option for you. That's my experience as I've worked with hundreds of clients. Those that are the most unhealthy, they'll probably find that the individual Medicare AB and the Medicare Gap and the drug is a better option, whereas others that are younger, coming into Medicare for the first time, or very, very healthy, the Medicare Advantage is your better option. So again, watch for my video. I'll explain Medicare Advantage on that, and I think you'll be also maybe very interested in that plan as well. Thank you.